Okay, so I got a plan for today, and that's to get stats on gear. So I'm gonna record, well, I'm recording now as I start, and I'll do a follow-up after I'm done for the day. Hopefully I can make some progress, because I'm having a hard time right now. A bit of an update. So this is using the same exact inventory system. This is, I don't know if it's the best way to go about it, but I mean, it's definitely not, but I don't know if it's an okay to go away about it. Anyway, I all of these are just copy pasted inventories. Same as the backpack, right? So this is just another backpack. The thing that I added is on the item grid script. Now we have a public item grid type, right, for inventory or equipment, just to handle things differently. As well as I added a list for allowed items. So you can see that represented over here. I have my grid type equipment, allowed items, helmet. So now if items spawn in, and I can put the pants on, and I cannot wear the pants as a shirt or a helmet, as you would expect. Same for all of this. This is all working, I believe, as it should be working. I don't have item swapping yet, which I don't know. I'm feeling less confident about this whole implementation. Obviously it's possible, but I encountered an issue where if I was trying to, if I took a shirt off of inventory or equipment and I tried to put it on as a hat, and then I would put it back as a shirt, it would pick up the hat, and it was I don't even know where I put it. Yeah, so what was happening is, because this is not my inventory system that I created, and I did that last video where I was trying to understand it. That's why I wanted to do it, because I encountered this issue and I was like, it took me forever to fix. But basically what was happening is when this block of code runs, it's actually setting the inventory item. And what was happening was, in try-place item, is slot full was running before I did my check on whether or not that space can hold it. So it was setting the overlap item and never getting rid of the overlap item. So then I had a choice between figure out the best place to set the overlap item back to null, or I was like, well, let me just put this ahead of that. Let me put this check ahead of this before the overlap item even gets set, and see if that works. And it did work. So, it took me a while to figure that out, just because I'm having to chase things back. All these methods, I'm having to figure out when they're getting implemented. I had a bunch of debug logs everywhere. Eventually figuring out the issue and getting it fixed. But one of the downsides of me not being well versed in C# and then also using somebody else's inventory implementation, as good as it is, just not fully understanding what things are happening, and then I'm trying to figure out where this overlap item is being set. So and was over here, I think. Overlap item, right? So I do my Shift F12, and I'm like, it's never being set. The overlap item is never being set. So because I didn't understand this. Try place item. So this is sending a reference of overlap item, right? So over here, I'm getting the reference of the overlap item, which is being sent, and then because I'm getting a reference, I can actually set, and it's not, it's not the same overlap item as it is there, but it is a reference to it. So I am setting it. Wait, is slot full? I'm sorry, it was right here. So I'm setting a reference to the overlap item. Is that 2 references? Reference, inventory item, overlap item, item grid, try place item, and that's being called. Yeah, so in inventory controller, I'm calling try place item, which is sending a reference to the overlap item which exists here. And then over here, I have that, and then I'm using that and sending that as a reference over here is slot full. So like, you know, I guess still item grid, but and then overlap item here. Then I'm setting it. I'm setting it here if it's not null. So like, because of how overlap item, which is the item underneath the item that you're trying to place, is functioning within the code, when I would click, it would run that check, set it, and then always be having a reference to it, which there's a bunch of checks like these, if overlap item is not null, or if overlap item blah blah blah, in other parts of the code. So having that overlap item get set and then be there as opposed to being null in other aspects of the functions or the methods here, it was just causing an issue where it was picking up the item and doing weird things. So like literally the fix became just run this check before. Can I place the item here at all? Is the is the item on the grid? Is it big enough, or is the inventory big enough to hold it? Is there a slot there? And then does that item belong there? Can it even fit in that grid based on the grid type and all that? So anyway, so that's more or less sorted. So now, oh, this is the other guy's thing, which I'm going to have to steal a bunch of stuff from. So now, I can equip items, right? And my items, if I go to helmet here, basic armor, basic helmet. So on the helmet itself, armor, so it inherits from equipable item SO. So in my equipable item, right? So this is what I'm trying to do. I don't know if it's going to work out in this way, if I'll have to change a bunch of stuff or whatever. But so my equipable item, every equipable item is going to have its base attributes, and that's a list, right? And then it's going to have an implicit modifier. If you've played Path of Exile, items can have implicit modifiers. A sword can give you accuracy as a base stat, or it can give you crit damage, or whatever it is. And so this is fluff. It doesn't have to be there, but it's something I would like to add. So, but just to start with, I'm going to have base attributes and item affixes. So item affix struct. So right now these are structs in the item. The base attribute is a struct, and that's going to hold an attribute type, an increase type, and a float value. And same for the implicit, and same for the item affix. So the plan is that each item, each instance of an item, I'll be able to set the base attributes, set the implicit modifier of that item, and then add and remove, which I could add and remove to any of these, so maybe I'll make those arrays or something. But the affixes is really what I'm worried about, because I'm trying to lead into crafting here. So if I want to add affixes right now, this sounds good. So flat strength and then a value of 4, right? So let's say additive strength, and I guess I'll also need a local or global. So additive strength, that's going to be 10, but it's 10%. And then let's say cast power, flat cast power of 30. So each of these, right? This is what my item affixes are going to be, and since it's a list, I should be able to, add or remove specific things, yada yada. This is my plan, right? Get this working using lists in some fashion like this. So the other guy, and he had another really good implementation, and I was trying not to just straight up take what he's doing, because it wasn't the exact system that I was doing. But I'm probably going to end up getting parts from it. So if I play this, let's zoom in a little bit. Well, it's just shitty quality or whatever. Let's zoom back out. So he's got, you can see each of these items. This shirt has strength and vitality. These are being set manually in a static way for now. Equipable items. So hat. So um, strength bonus, strength, agility bonus. Like these, this is if I go to the actual equipable item, so this is here, right? I don't want to do this. I want to have a more generic implementation, specifically with lists. So I'm going to try not to do this, but you know, this guy seemed to know what he was doing, and he did it this way. So who am I? You know what I mean? But anyway, if I take these items, and you can drag and drop them, same. And if I equip them, you'll see over here that these change, right? So it is equipping the item, it's adding the stats to the character stats, yada yada. This is a working implementation of a system that is similar to the one that I want to do. So I'm trying to Frankenstein what he's got, and he's got a character stat over here and stat modifier, which I'm leaning towards doing. Right now I have just an attribute, and I'm thinking maybe I'll have player attributes and item attributes, which will inherit from this or derive from it, depending on if methods end up being in here or whatever. And I have player attributes over here, and as of right now, this was the base implementation of it that I just threw in there to have something. I'm starting to think that this is going to need a refactor. And the item data, equipable item, let's throw that over here. But basically that's where I'm at, and the plan for today is to move towards having stats on items that I can add and remove for crafting purposes. So I'll start recording later. I guess this will probably be a longer video because it's already 11 minutes, just this first part, but I'll maybe do some recordings throughout the day or something. Anyway, bye for now. Alright, so it's about 12 hours later, and I'm pretty fried at this point, but I got further than I thought I would, so that's good, and the implementation isn't bad. I haven't tested a lot because it basically just got things working, you know, as far as I can tell, but I didn't test a lot of other stuff. But I'm just going to show you kind of where things are at now. UI and everything needs to be looking better, but so let's get a weapon there. Okay, so total value 17.5, total value 1.75. Okay, so that's a problem. But anyway, I'll fix that some other time. So the stats go up and they go down. So I mean, that's pretty much all I've been doing is getting it to get to this point. But these are swapping helmets, and you can't wear things in other spots, so that's good. But you know, if you go ahead and equip yourself, you got all your stats. You're getting all the stats. Backpack equipped items, helmet, basic helmet. So you can see here the stats that are being applied are under item affixes. So just 5 endurance, 5 strength, flat, global. The order is whatever. A lot of this was taken from, and I'll link this guy's video too, items inventory, Kryzarel. He had a really cool video series on doing stats and also an inventory an item, just not with the grid. So I took a lot of what he did. The stat modifiers and the character stats look very, very similar to what I have in my I here? Yeah, so in my attribute modifiers and attribute class. I did a couple things differently. I using enums for a couple different things, as well as some of the same things that he used them for. I plugged in a total value. A lot of this was me trying to figure how to make things work. Calculate final value needs to have I'm gonna have to add a bunch of different stuff for that, because like cast power and stuff, if your strength is higher, it needs to calculate your strength also. Your strength's gonna, so I need to figure out how to do that. I have another class for stats. So here I'm defining all of my attributes and setting their type to what they ought to be. And then I'm plugging those into a list, and that's in the stats class. So my player has an instance of the stats class. And I was doing I tried an interface and an abstract class for this, but some of the implementations weren't working out right, and I ended up I put this in there and I've been running with that. So perhaps an interface or something could work better. Originally, the reason I made this in the first place really was, the reason this is called attribute instead of like player stats, because I was going to have players. My player will have stats, and then all of my equipped items would have stats. So I had an equipped item script, and I was going to total up all of the stats from my equipped items and put it on there, and then send that over to the player. But I left that alone and ended up just doing essentially how Kryzarel was doing it, which is just kind of calculating and adding stuff on the fly when you equip and unequip stuff. So I don't necessarily like that the calculation is done when you're equipping and unequipping an item, but it's probably not a huge performance loss, if any, as it shouldn't be happening too often anyway. I didn't do much with the other stuff. Trying to think. I have this on serialization too. This is for I didn't do anything with implicit attributes. Also, these are no longer structs; they're just lists, and they're list of attribute, and attribute modifier. So all my attribute modifier is this, which every time I call it, I need to define the scope. So I'm going to have a couple other constructors, I think, so I don't have to do that every time, because sometimes it's not relevant. And in fact, it's only relevant in the equipable item when I call initialize after I create the item. It does handle local modifiers, and that's going to go ahead and that's where the issue was with that's where the issue is, somewhere with the fishing pole, because okay, so it looks fine now. I don't know why it's different now. What about when it's in my backpack? Basic bowl. No, it's before it was like 17. The total value was like 17 or something. So it shouldn't have been that. But it's not now. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll address that in the future. So now, and I wanted to try to make it not so difficult to add and remove stats. This was so far the best that I've come up with here is just in this stats here. I'll add stats to stats, and then I add those stats to the list, and I need the list so that I can over here. I thought this stuff kind of worked out pretty cool. just, for each whatever, I get the type of the attribute in question, and then I find, I don't know how bad this is, I don't know how bad find is, but I find the stat that matches the attribute type here, and then I cache a reference to it, and then I can just specifically add to that stat, which every stat is an attribute. So every stat has access to this whole class and all its data and everything. So it should be handling the local modifiers first, and then once the local modifiers are done, then it should be adding that. So I don't have cast power and real speed. I kind of do. It's never getting called though, so it's probably not updating. Yeah, real speed is still 0. So I'll have to see if it's doing that correctly, because I actually didn't test that. As far as adding the base attributes, which I'm just trying to think of a better name for that too. It's just the stats on your gear. So like fishing pole is going to have cast power and real speed associated with it, which is essentially your weapon damage and a weapon attack speed as an analog. So it needs to, and my modifiers have global or local. Yeah, global and local. Same as like Path of Exile. This whole system is kind of like done foundationally similar to what Path of Exile does in terms of what modifiers affect what they're called, global, local, percent, multiplicative. I'm going to use more and increased and all that. So I really like their system, and I'm familiar with it. So I wanted to move forward kind of in that style. So I mean, this was 12 hours here, and I know it's not really much, but it was hard. I really wasn't sure for a while if I was going to be able to figure a lot of the stuff out. Thankfully, I had done Kryzarel's course, which is amounted to this implementation, which he's got tooltips and stuff too. So I want to put that stuff in too in a similar fashion. Right now they just show up in the bottom right, but you can right click to add, and it will increase your stats. It's kind of hard to see, but same thing. So I used a lot of that. Ended up being implemented in a very similar, if not identical, way, and it was just kind of like getting that to work with the different item modifiers and attributes that I wanted to have, as well as doing it in a way, because on his implementation, if you look at the items, canvas, character panel, equipment panel, hat slot. Is it going to have that? Pant slot. I guess it would be maybe over here, equipable items. So like, what he did was just strength bonus, agility bonus. This is just on the item. And if you go to equipable item here, so I wanted to do it differently than this, but each equipable item is now having a definition for strength, agility, intelligence, and then also strength, agility, intelligence, percent bonus, and whatnot. And then if you're adding, when you equip the item, it does this. So I wasn't really happy with that, and I knew that I wanted kind of more versatility with my system, and also if I wanted to craft on items, which I do, how am I going to add a stat dynamically in a situation like this? So hopefully doing it this way, whereby my items, basic pants, have item affixes, and then I can just add an affix. So I'll just generate an affix, which is a attribute modifier. I'll just generate a new value, and then I can add that to the item affixes list. And I'll do that in a little crafting window. It'll be kind of, if you've played Path of Exile, it'll be like the crafting bench exclusively, and I don't think I'm going to have anything like Chaos Orbs or anything like that. The identifiable that probably wouldn't be too hard. I do like the fact that you find items and you don't know what they're on until you identify it, so maybe I'll do something like that too. But I also have implicit attributes and base attributes, which that functionality should just, if I add it here, it should just work, because of all of this calculation is being done in the equipable item SO. So if I add the stats over there, and there's just no implementation for the implicit, but if I add it over there, it should, it should work. That was the goal, and I just haven't really tested it too much. What I'm thinking now, though, is like your helmet shouldn't be able to roll cast speed or cast power, or it at least shouldn't have any local variables with cast power. So any percentage cast power multiplier would have to be global. So each individual item is going to need a list of attributes that can be put on it. So I was trying to avoid making individual scriptable object scripts for each equipable item, helmet, pants, shirt, and all that, but it's looking like that might be the way to go in terms of defining which items can have which stats. It'll be a little cumbersome to manage all of that. I think. I guess it won't be too bad. I shouldn't have to do it for a bunch of different items or different pants or anything. It should just be able to do it once for pants. But I'm thinking that's where I'll go from here. So that's about it, I think. I wanted to do handle local modifiers, but none of this was applying. Did anything change with the player? Not really. The level up system, since I moved level up over to down here in stats, because I wanted to have, I think the items have stats too. Is that true? It's not true. I was going to have the items have stats also. I was thinking about doing it that way. I still could do that, because I need a way to assign the item level and then also generate stats on that. But for now, this isn't impeding anything. I just had to change some variables and do a little bit of refactoring. So yeah, also my movement speed is weird. Current movement speed. So my movement speed, what happens is it was always calling this, or it is always calling this. It's always setting this every time this is getting called, and this is essentially being called an update because handle movement is being called an update, and handle movement is doing this all of the time. Because I just wanted to add some acceleration, so I could just remove the acceleration. It's not going to be an issue. But what's occurring is when I calculate the final value, that's getting called every time the value is called. So if the value is changed, that's getting called anytime the values change. So there's a couple of things that I could do to solve it, but what was happening is because I was being called all the time, and what I was doing originally was just base value, or total value plus equals base value, because I didn't have any of this other stuff implemented. So it was just continuously adding that, because it was being called every time in update. It was continuously adding that, and because the check for value change included this line, and I was modifying the base value, but even if I modify the total value, it's still going to just continuously be true and change the value if I'm doing any type of plus equals or anything like that. So the solution, maybe temporary, maybe I just leave it, was just to have a current movement speed variable in player stats, and then I use that for determining acceleration. Total value. It should work. It should work with just that. But again, I haven't tested all the stuff that I want to test just yet. So anyway, I'm pretty happy with where I got. I was really unsure of if this was going to come together in the way that I wanted it to, and I was going to be able to make use of the different ideas that I had. Um, Specifically, all of these enums that I have defined. Attribute type, and I thought that would work out good with the listing, and then it did work out good with the listing, especially because I can do this, which ChatGPT helped me out with that. So like this is like everything that I did today. It is like pretty much 90% ChatGPT, and then Kryzarel's tutorial and implementation, and then 10% was like I like made some stuff up and actually got to do a bit of freestyle coding, or whatever you want to refer to that as. So that still feels good. I still, there's a lot of stuff that I need to learn. I tried to do structs and abstract and interfaces, and I tried to fit those in, but I don't fully understand them, so I wasn't able to get them working probably as best as I could have, or that it could be done, just because I don't really understand them, or when or how to use them. I watched so many videos on, like, what's an abstract class, what's an interface, what's the difference, what's a struct, but nothing seemed to really click. And then even when I implemented them, I got a little more familiar with them, but it didn't seem like it needed to be done for what I was doing, or I just have a poor understanding of how to utilize them. So anyway, I think that's actually it this time. So there you go. 12 hours later, and I'm at a pretty decent state. I'm really happy with the progress here and the implementation. So a lot of this is just going to be messing around with random stats on items, and then implementing the attribute multiplier and seeing how all that comes together. But now I can actually start playing around with stats and their values, and how they impact the character, and yada yada. Whereas I just couldn't before because there was no implementation of it. All I could do is like theorize. So yeah, pretty long video. This time I guess it'll probably be like 35 minutes. So anyway, bye.